work will essentially spill into whatever time we give it, right? So if we have
Absolutely.
if we have a 3-hour practice, we are going to fill the whole thing. Doesn't mean we're going to do it any more effectively. But if we say, you know what, we're only going an hour and 45. And so some coaches think that's lazy. In my opinion, a 3-hour practice is lazy because I got so much time to do whatever. But if it's an hour 45, you want to talk about efficiency because we still got to perform, right? So you can do less. A lot of people do less, but can you do less and still be effective? And what we found is the effectiveness of that less can be very high if the kids understand it, right?
This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission to help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle. We have always done it that way. It's a phrase you hear a lot, and honestly, it's a terrible excuse. Now, I'm all for tradition. There's some really good traditions out there, and doing things the old way sometimes is good, but just saying we've always done it that way is honestly, it's a lazy excuse. And what it tells me is that you're not invested enough in future success to even explore other ideas. Why just assume that the old way is better? Imagine if we adhered to that in medicine. You know, get a migraine, go to the doctor, here's some leeches. If that doesn't work, come back tomorrow. We'll just open a vein and really get the bad blood out. I mean, somewhere somebody realized that, hey, this is a bad idea and needed to try something else. And there's a good chance they got ridiculed for it or thought it was ridiculous. And to be fair, not all change is good, and some changes do make things worse. But I don't believe that you should change for change's sake. But I do believe you should ask the question, why? Why do I do what I do? How do I coach like I do? How do I parent like I do? Why do I do things? Is there a reason for it? Is there, a cause and effect, or is it just the way because it's always been done? And is it just because they say, right? So my guest today is Coach Brad Dixon, and he is the poster boy for how change can make things better and going away from the old way. So Brad is the head coach for Camp Point Central football. And if you are in Illinois and you follow football at all, like you know about Brad and the Camp Point Central football team. So he was prompted by, and you hear this in the interview, but some lackluster seasons. He had some player injuries, and just in the middle of season, he decided he's going to change the way he did things. And you'll hear about it in the interview, but there's two things that he focused mostly. One, he made sure he was building his practices to fit the performance. On performance, he means on Friday nights. And he also makes sure that his players and his staff are peaking mentally and physically for that performance. So it's very performance based. And I don't mean outcome based. I mean performance based, as in we're going to perform our best and and he'll say it in the interview, we'll let the scoreboard take care of itself, but he's making sure that Friday is the big day, right? So no longer does he run his practices in this old school way where you grind for grind's sake and you just beat him down and got to hit hard. And we're especially talking about a very physical game in football. But now they actually use their practices to make sure that their players perform the best again on Friday nights. And we're going to get into the benefits of this interview. But I have to say that from a social emotional standpoint, I just love how he runs his practice. There's a program that I do. I go into schools, I work with coaches and stuff, and I call it Ember to Inferno program, and it's about building mental toughness in athletes. And trust me, a little spoiler alert, it's not about just getting them on the line and making them run until they throw up. That's not what it is. But I've created it to help coaches realize that they are in a very unique position to help athletes grow mentally. And it also, I also point out the fact that sometimes if they're not making it a priority to help their athletes grow mentally, then they're actually sometimes diminishing the health of their athletes, the mental health. And I also kind of challenge coaches and let them know that, hey, this should be a responsibility of coaches to help your athletes develop their mental health. And I don't mean by making things so hard that they have to learn how to survive, right? That's an old school mentality. Life and athletics have more than enough adversity to make them hard without you piling it on just because that's the way we used to do it. Some of your athletes might get tougher if you do it that way, but a lot won't. And athletes should not be coming tougher in spite of you. They should be doing it because you're helping them through it and promoting it in a healthy way. There's a great book I mentioned in this professional development, and it's called The Deepest Well by Nadine Burke Harris. And there's some really good stuff in here. But one of the things she talks about is the long-term health effects of trauma in kids and actually adults, but she tracks it all the way back to kids, and how the constant mental and physical stressors are heavily linked to long-term chronic diseases like cancer and heart disease. So even like trauma and stuff as a child, they can connect that to long-term things like just most diseases. They're connected because it puts so much stress on the body that it opens up the door for these diseases. And coach, I'm not saying that coaches are the cause of this trauma, but they can certainly make it worse. And I contend that instead of, being either neutral or making it worse, coaches, again, should have this responsibility that they heal some of this trauma and help with this trauma. And they can do that while still doing well in their sport. So coaches need to be part of this healing process. And that the healing process looks like, building positive relationships, healthy exercise, focusing on nutrition, making sure they get enough rest and recovery and sleep, and doing mindfulness practices, whether it's mindfulness exercises or just doing things in a mindful way and making them realize why we do what we do rather than just put them through hard things. I love doing this PD. It's one of my favorites. And I get some pushback sometimes, and some people, even if not verbally, that you can tell that they don't want to do it. Coaches are set in their ways. They don't want to change the way they do things. It could be that they've had some success and they say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But usually they're broke or not broke ideas all looking on the win-loss column. And they believe that, if they're having a little bit of wins, then I don't want to mess that up. And this is the way we've always done it. And if it's not working, then we need to double down on what we're doing. We're really not working hard enough. We need to work out more. And what I love about Brad, and Brad talks about that in this interview coming up, is that he's implemented a system that focuses on the health of players so that they can perform well. They're very mindful about what they do and what they don't do in practice. They don't just do things because that's old school football. They aren't just making kids run till they puke every day, or we have to hit with pads every day. And just because they're not doing that doesn't mean they aren't running a tough or effective practice. They don't grind just to grind. They work for a purpose and they rest for a purpose. And they truly are coaching smarter and not harder. It's a great interview. I can't wait for you to listen to it. Brad he's very passionate about what he does. He's very successful at what he does. It's a really good stuff. I can't wait for you to hear it. On the other side of the interview, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on some stuff on how, even if you don't coach football, how you can make this be something that you add to your life. Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness, using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mental Mettle Coaching. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm here with my guest today, Camp Point football head coach and athletic director, Brad Dixon. How you doing, Brad?
Oh, I'm doing well. Wish the weather was a little nicer, but I'm doing good.
Yeah, and I was joking with you before we started recording. I mean, it's January, and you've still got the crazy professor football blackboard behind you, and
yeah. I just did a football clinic down in Alabama this past weekend, and yeah, you talk down in SEC country, so that was
I just moved. I lived in Illinois for years, went down and lived near Nashville, Tennessee for a while, and then my wife and I just came back, and it's like it's a different level. I'm not saying the football is better, worse, whatever, but the intensity and the passion is a different level.
The facilities, I mean, every football kid is in the same class during the school day. Yeah, just the emphasis is definitely a whole different story.
I don't know how, honestly, being an educator, former educator, I don't know how they get all their credits in, because they run like a block, a 4-hour block, and the last hour is your sport.
Called athletics.
And it's like that, all athletics. Yeah. And I'm like, do you guys worry about math? And they're like, okay, yeah. I'm like, okay.
Only after football and basketball and baseball are taken care of.
Right. I know it's, and I'm not knocking it, because I got some really good coaches down there that I know and do a great job, but it is a different mindset. But yeah, so speaking of different mindsets, that's why I got you on here. One of your coaches, Matt Long, was on my podcast, and he said, you need to get Brad on, because after talking to Matt, he said, Brad is the kind of guy you need to talk to, because he's doing things differently from a physical and mental standpoint. And one of my favorite sayings is the idea that we've always done it that way is one of the worst excuses you can come up with, and I don't care what you do, right?
So yeah,
we get into that mindset, right? That, we've always done it that way, it must be better. Well, why is that?
Correct. Yeah, you always hear, there's a thing where, you coach 25 years, but you actually coach 1 year and repeat it for the next 24 years. There's that idea, or that you're always growing. And so usually though, something happens along the way that kind of refocuses you and gets you out of that whole mindset. And I'm sure we'll get into that as we go.
Well, I think that you can coach 1 year, 25 years, and you can make that even worse, because you can coach exactly like the guy that coached you. And which is what most of us do when we get into coaching, because that's what we know.
Especially football. I mean, football is a very archaic sport, and one of the big defining moments for me is I read an article from one of my mentors, Tony Holler, in 2017, And in that first paragraph was, football looks the same it did 40 years ago. And I'll never forget reading that because it was true. I mean, we were running football practices just like we did when I played in the late 90s and just like we probably, was being played in the late 80s. And here we are with every new ounce of technology imaginable, and we're still doing some of the same dumb things that we did. And that really got our mindset shift in it. We haven't looked back since.
And with the only reason just because some dude's watching from the stands going, why are they doing that? That's not why we did it. You got to do it, but there's a better ways to do it. So I'd love to jump into, well, first of all, if people don't know on the podcast, before we get into it, you're going to talk about doing things differently. And like you said, a little bit of a seminal moment there in 2017, or was it 18, that you read this and you're like, we're going to do things differently. Sometimes you do things differently and it doesn't work out. You decided to do things differently, and you've had a lot of success since that seminal moment, correct?
Correct. So a little bit of the background is I played a year of college football, Division III in Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, and then I hopped into coaching the next year in 2003. So I was 19 years old as an assistant high school football coach, where I went to high school at Western High School, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now part of Mercer County in the western part of the state. And so, I mean, I hopped right in, and I was going through college. And so I got to Camp Point, where I'm at now, in 2007 as a first-year teacher with 4 years of coaching experience, and got my first head job here in 2011. And this school was not known for football, but the guy that was before me, we had started building something in 2008. We made the playoffs for only the second time in school history, and we've made it every year since 2008. Well, I went 9-0 my first 3 regular seasons, 2011, 2012, 2013. Second round, semifinals, quarterfinals, and actually semifinals. Really 44-5. From 2011 to 24, you think you got everything figured out, right? We're 44-5. And then 2015 hit, and we struggled through a 5-5 with a bunch of injuries. 2017 hit, we were a little better. We went 7-3, but in both years we got blown out in the first round of the playoffs, had a ton of injuries, had a concussion that knocked one of our best players out for his career, and we were just kind of treading water. And then, like I said, then that article comes out, and it was entitled New School Ideas for Old School Football Coaches. And it just changed this whole thought process of being a performance-based program instead of a hard work-based program. And some people say, what do you mean? You got to work hard. Yeah, you do. To perform is hard work, but to focus actually on performance and being able to perform on Friday night, not just doing a bunch of random hard things and expecting them to take, to come to play on that Friday night. And so in 2017, midway through the year, we were sitting at like 3-2, and we were kind of in that same mode. We were going to struggle, and we decided we were getting ready to play the number 2 team in the state that was undefeated, one of our rivals. We decided, you know what, instead of conditioning on Monday, we're not going to run on Monday. We're going to take the pads off and only wear them on Wednesday this week. We're going to focus on our recovery. We're going to try to get our guys feeling good and healthy. And we went on a run. We upset them that night. We upset another undefeated team in week 9. We ended up losing on essentially the last play of the game in the second round in 2017. But it forever changed our mindset. So when 2018 rolled around, we were all in on what we now call sprint-based football, essentially performance-based football. And that year we went to our first state championship, and we've been fortunate to go to the state championship 3 times since 2008, the semifinals this past year. And like I said, it's changed our whole focus to our training, how we practice, everything, as a result of having a lot of success early, having this downturn, essentially having my eyes open to a new way by a mentor. And then just really besides that, there was no other playbook to how to do this. And we've just been working through things since 2018.
Well, walk me through sprint-based football. Walk me through what the change was. You did it in the middle of a season. How did practice, you have practice on a Thursday night, and then the next week you're like, we're doing it different starting on Monday. First of all, let me just say, as a player coming to practice on Monday and be like, and finding out that we're suddenly not going to sprint and not going to, like, you probably won the locker room right there.
Yeah. So obviously we all have been taught this, it's pretty much a lie, right? If you work hard enough, you'll win, right? Well, there's a lot of really hardworking teams that go 0-9, a lot of them. And the general default is if I outwork everybody, at least we can say we did everything we could. And so we did the traditional, right? Monday was a heavy conditioning day. Tuesday, full pads, let's hit the heck out of each other. Wednesday, full pads, let's hit the heck out of each other. Back off a little bit on Thursday. Friday's the game. Bring them in early Saturday, maybe hit the weight room, maybe do a flush out run, watch film, and then Sunday would be our only day off. And then we had coaches meetings on Sunday, and that's how we did it for a long time. And so the question is that the best way? And what we found is when you do less, the less that you do actually improves performance, right? I mean, no one ever does anything in their own personal life double what they have to do it, right? But that's kind of how football coaches are. We double down. We have 3-hour practices, and we don't understand that the game, when you break down our game, which we did, we play about 11 to 12 minutes of football in an entire 2.5 to 3 hour game. And we stand around for 60 minutes between timeouts and time in between plays. And it's about a 1-to-6, 1-to-5 work rest ratio. But we would go out and run gassers across the field and bear crawls and do 100-yard sprints and 110s and all of these things, and just felt like as long as what we did was hard, when push came to shove in a game night, that it would be we would be able to persevere. And the reality was that wasn't happening. So what do you do when you lose, right? You double down.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we didn't work hard enough, guys. And so, you think about the cycle. You get beat on Friday, you bring them in on Saturday. Now Monday's even harder, Tuesday's even harder, Wednesday's even harder. You don't win on Friday. Okay, we're still not going hard enough, or you guys don't care enough. We're going to show you how we do this. And so one thing I failed to mention there is I also started coaching track in the spring of 2017. And I showed up to track practice, and I was like, okay. We started doing stuff. I'm like, man, if I coached my track guys like my football guys, we're going to be the slowest track team in the state of Illinois. We're going to be hurt.
Yes,
we're
sir.
going to be sore. So I had all of these things. The concussion movie had came out. 8-man football's on the rise. There were, when I look back, there were so many outside things going on top of us being in a rut that we needed to change something. And that something was that, I didn't have the answer. I always tell people, I got hit over the head multiple times with doing things different, but it took us struggling. And then when I read that article, this is late July. So what happens in late July? I mean, the hay's in the barn. The season's about to start.
Yeah.
I shared this article with our coaches. And I'm like, hey, I love this. Obviously we can't make this change now, but man, remember this for next year. Well, then guess what? In the middle of that kind of muddy middle of the season, it's like, what if we don't condition on Monday this time? Maybe our kids will feel better if we don't condition. And so we did it. We just said, hey, we're not going to condition today. We're going to watch film. We're going to get our game plan in, and we're only going to wear helmets on Tuesday because we want to set up a good Wednesday. And, it's like this blasphemy, right? And we are literally like throwing darts at the wall because we don't really know how to do this. We don't know if it's going to work. And we played so dang well on Friday night. And we, at one point, had a 28-0 lead on a team that was ranked in the top 4 in the state. And so obviously, we had some early success. And so boom, we went on this run. But yeah, so to define sprint-based football, it's an emphasis on rest and recovery, right? We don't want today to ruin tomorrow's practice, and we want to make Friday the biggest night of the week, right? We want our kids to not get to Friday limping into Friday. We want them to come to Friday being like, man, it's finally Friday. We are jacked up. We feel good. We feel healthy. And we do that by limiting how much we wear pads in practice. So we don't take the practice field on Monday. We only wear helmets on Tuesday, which limits your collisions. On Wednesdays are our one full pad day of the week. We have our Thursday pre-practice We play like heck on Friday night. Our kids are fast and healthy and fresh. We take Saturday off. We take Sunday off. We don't have coaches meetings on the weekend. We do everything through, Google Drive and Huddle Messenger. And when Monday rolls around again, our guys are recovered and refreshed and ready for the next week. And we've found that to be a recipe for our guys being able to play physical, violent football on Friday night by monitoring how much we do through the week and then how well they feel on Friday night.
That's so it just begs a lot of questions. And I'm going to try to figure out what the best order, when you talk about them being able to play fast, physical, violent football. Okay. How do you, like, that is something that also it's like that needs a little bit of practice too.
Yeah.
Right. Like that, you can't just like if you want to go play violent, that has to be something you've done before. Right. And practice, like you still have to be, it'd be one thing if you were all fresh and ready, but if you're not any good at football, it really doesn't matter. Like, how do you manage to get them good at football? I get what you're doing, and and it's working, and I think it's a great idea. There's a lot. They're ready to go for the performance. How do you get them good at football as well?
Yeah, so I think, what I always tell people, you still got to know what the heck you're doing coaching football. So I'm fortunate enough to have two guys on my staff that we've been together for most of the 18 years I've been here. So we're a wing tee football team that I always tell people, we've screwed up enough stuff that we've got a lot of answers to stuff. We've got fundamentals that we expect. So sprint-based football is not soft. It's not a lack of fundamentals. It's not standards. It's high standards. And because we are respectful of the kids' time and they know that we're not going to bury them with a bunch of useless stuff, that when we ask them to do something that's hard within practice, they know that that's going to be, it's going to be predicated by a period that allows them to play that way. And it's also going to follow up by a period that's going to be, so if we get into a goal line drill where it's 1st and goal from the 5 and we expect our number one defense to get a stop, we didn't do a bunch of conditioning leading up to that, and we're not going to destroy them at the end of that. So we have what we call a wave theory, where we do it every night, right? We have the day and then night and day and night. That's how our body operates. Well, we do that throughout the week. So we consider Monday for us, because we have athletic PE. So we do some high CNS stuff. We sprint. I mean, that's why we call it sprint-based football, is we want to get our kids as fast as possible, even our big guys. We want it. So we track miles per hour. We track top speeds. We wear GPS that tracks all that stuff up. So when we get into Tuesday with pads on, with just helmets, it is a fundamental practice. We're working on the fundamentals of football, how to down block, and so what people always often confuse physicality or a lack of physicality with uncertainty of assignment, uncertainty of technique. And so they double down on the hitting, when in the reality, the physicality isn't probably what lost you the game. It might be the fact that you put the ball on the turf 3 times. It might be the fact that your guys don't know how to down block. It might be the fact that your running backs don't know how to cut. It might be the fact that you can't throw and catch, and then we just say, well, we're just not physical enough. And so that's our Tuesday. We focus on all that stuff. We get, we're very demanding on, this is how it's done in our program. And we start it from the ground up. Our varsity coaches coach our freshmen. When we get into position groups, we don't just stick them off to the side. So they understand that. So we don't have the ebbs and flows where you have a state championship caliber season, and then the next year you go 4-5. And then, you might be back to 7-2. And when a good class comes again, we want to stay at the top, no matter, at the small school public level in Illinois, we get what we get, and we understand that. So because we have a really fundamental Tuesday practice where we're going against bags and hand shields, but we are coaching the heck out of all of our technique. When Wednesday rolls around, we have that same wave theory within our Wednesday practice. So we have periods where we're going to mix it up, where we're going to run some team stuff, we're going to run some goal line stuff, we're going to ask them to execute things at a physical level. But we're also going to have periods where it's more install, or it's more, formation recognition, or we have 5-minute breaks in practice throughout practice, right? Because the game is choppy. A football game is not a 2.5, and coaches have a hard time, right? Because when practice starts, they want this thing to be a 2.5 hours of just, wherever you're at, you're running. Well, that's not how the game is, right? The game is played 5th gear, break. fifth gear, break, fifth gear. Well, most practices are just a constant state of third gear from start to finish.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go, we're on the move. And so when we wonder why we cramp and we have injuries, it's like, well, the only time they get exposed to these high speeds and contact and stuff is in a game. And so we have those periods and then we don't. But in all reality, once our kids have demonstrated the ability to do that in games, we continue to back off and back off and back off. And our ones, as the season goes on, get even less physical reps. And then we tweak things and add mental reps. And there were times this year in the playoffs where we didn't wear pads one time through the week. Because from a physical standpoint, they had demonstrated that part was taken care of. They were showing up and doing things. So we didn't need to beat them up in practice. We needed to continue to focus on things, like I said, from a technique standpoint that were going to help us win. Getting off the ball faster, stepping with the right foot, better pad level, all these different things, hand placement, how to properly double team, whatever the scenarios, getting off blocks, that kind of stuff, hand extension. And so we focused on all that. And then when we get to Friday, because they're not beat up, because they're not injured, because we essentially have our whole roster. We've had 2 kids miss a game in the last 3 years.
I mean, so, you could sell the program, you could sell the idea on that, right?
100%. At any level, especially at the small school level, but even if you're playing 8A football, right? People have ones, whatever, Coach Holler always says, like, every football team is really built on about 15 players. And really there's about 6 guys that do everything, in all reality. And you can't lose those guys. And if you do, you're going to be worse. And so
are most of your guys going both ways?
So that's another thing that's part of this sprint-based philosophy, right? So our goal is to play 22 different starters, even at the 1A level. So we had a roster last year of 58, which in my opinion is another selling point in 1A football. Where we have 220 kids in our school. We have 58 guys on our team last year, which is in some cases double some of the schools in our conference.
Well, and I say all the time right now that it is the number one indicator if a coach and a program is doing it right since COVID. If your numbers are coming up and you're doing something well, because you can't play without players, and right. you have to do something that the players it has to be similar they want to be.
So for us, what we try to sell to them is, listen, here's our philosophy, guys. We want to play every kid on this roster in a varsity game. Now, some of you aren't ready yet, but if you prove that you're ready, we will find a way to play you. We're not Iron Man football. So we have one-way players, and this year we had maybe 6 out of 11. And then we have two-way players, which each year, 2 to 3 guys that hardly come off the field. And then we have what we call 1.5-way players, which are, we may start a guy on both sides of the ball, but like in our wing T system, we try to give the ball. We have a 3-back offense. We try to give the ball to 8 different guys every game. We try to rotate guys in at tight end. We'll rotate guys through the offensive line. We'll rotate in an outside linebacker. So we are trying to rotate guys in and out. And we're trying not to give anybody the ball, I think our leading ball carrier maybe had 150 carries in 14 games. We're not sitting here giving the ball to some guy in the I formation 30 times a game.
Yeah,
so which goes to continuing to build depth and being able to hopefully win consistently. Is if our mindset is to play as many one-way guys as we can, then we think through every possible scenario to get a guy on the field. And when you do that, you are playing guys that you may, I hear people all the time, well, there's a huge drop-off. Everybody has a huge drop-off.
Sure.
Right? Everyone, like I said, there's ones and then there's twos. And most people's twos are a big drop-off. But can you put a guy in a game and allow him to do something? So maybe it's an offensive tackle that cannot block one-on-one worth a darn. Well, guess what? When he's in the game, you don't call plays where he has to block somebody one-on-one. You call plays where he's going to be in a double team. You call plays where he's going to pull.
Yeah.
You run away from him for a couple plays in a row because he can block backside. You find ways throughout the game. You bring a running back in. He's not a downhill runner, but we can get him to the ball on the edge, or he'll fake his butt off, or he'll stick his nose in there and block.
And that has a lot of implications other than just keeping guys rested. Like if you get everybody if however many players you have and most of them know they're going to get in a game on Friday night, you want to talk about more buy-in.
Yeah, 100%. And that So again, retention is huge, right? Can we keep them from year to year, right? And we talk about this. Kids don't want to sit on the bench. Sometimes you got to earn your time. I mean, that's the reality. But if we can play as many guys as we can, then we are reducing their opportunity for injury. The fresher they are, the less chance something bad. There's always going to be bad stuff that happens in football. Think like one of our running backs this year was playing defensive back, and he was wrapping up the ball carrier, and our all-state middle linebacker comes over to clean it up, and he lands on his ankle, and it's a high ankle sprain. Those things happen in football. That's the nature of the sport. But in terms of like ligaments and someone tearing their ACL or any of that stuff's pretty much been eliminated in our program because of, our focus on health, rest, recovery, all those things, trying to play as many guys as we can and keeping other kids interested in the program. And then, like I said, when, we graduated off our state championship team last year, we only brought back three people that made up 5 of our 22 starting spots. And we were able to go back to the semifinals with a chance to go back to state with 17 new guys in positions. And this year we'll graduate 13. And so we started 2 freshmen this year. And all season.
And what I love and what you're talking about, this rest and recovery and making that a focus, but you're not just saying, you went out and got some training on how to do rest and recovery the right way. Yeah. Isn't that correct?
Oh, 100%.
Which I think is huge.
Yeah. So we, to sprint fast, you have to be healthy. It's really Coach Holler calls it a barometer of health. So if our guys are fast, it's actually a representation of how healthy they are. If our guys are slow, and here's what I know from GPS this year. If you only do football stuff, you will never get above, for the most part, 16 mile an hour in a practice. Okay, that's pretty slow. The game of football is played between 12 and 16, 17 miles an hour. Well, if you come into the season at 20 mile an hour as your top speed and you only do football stuff, by the end of the season, you're going to be slower and less explosive. So, and that's how we did it forever, right? It's the grind of the season. Well, what if we flip that and say, no, we're going to sprint on Monday, we're going to do a sprint period on Wednesday, and we're going to use Friday as our third sprint period of the week, and we're going to make sure our guys stay fast. And a lot of our guys are going to continue to get faster throughout the season, continue to improve their explosiveness. And I mean, why do we have to be slower at the end of the season? And some people think, well, that's just the grind of football. Well, what if, everybody takes the day after a game off, right? For the most part, they don't do a lot. Well, if your Tuesday practice is more intense than the game, why do we come back on Wednesday and destroy our kids again? And so we track their vertical jump data. We track their sprint data. We wear GPS units. We have 10 GPS units that tracks player load, which is essentially high speed work. How much, what is it on the CNS? And so this was our first year we were wearing GPS, which we learned some stuff that we're going to adjust.
Oh, I'm sure. Data's power, man.
Oh, and so we've been doing this for, since 2018. I don't know what you call it, anecdotally or just using our eyes, which is also really good, right? If half your guys are dragging into practice and they're not ready to have a good physical practice. But now we have GPS data where we can say, okay, we used to think that these 2 periods in practice were low CNS. They're actually pretty intense periods. We need to move these to these days because we don't want the body confused. We want to keep our high days high, our low days low, so that, if we do spike the system, which we want to right here, we're going to come back with a much more fundamental low CNS, right? Where we're not going to, we're still going to do football stuff, but football's played between 12 and 17 miles an hour. So if we can keep a guy, and this is kind of my selling point on max speed, because everyone says football is played in acceleration. Yeah, most of the time, right? But if I am at 22 miles an hour, and that's my top speed, how many 17 mile an hour reps can I play in a game? Every one of them. If my top speed is 18 mile an hour, how much am I playing at 17? Not very long. Not very long at all. Right?
Yeah.
And so even our linemen, if we can get our linemen to 18, 19, and what was crazy is in 2023 when we won the state championship, we didn't start a guy over 205, and everyone on our defense could run 20 mile an hour. And we beat a team that averaged, so Lena Winslow, who's been the class of 1A football, they do a phenomenal job. Their coaches are awesome. They train the right way. They had us outmanned at every position by size. Huge team. And we were faster than them. And their coach even said after the game, it was like they knew where we were going before we knew where we were going.
Mm-hmm.
And we won that game. We shut out a team that hadn't been shut out since 2007, has been to 7 of the last 11 state championships, and we beat them 14-0. So for a team that's, some people, sprint-based football, that sounds soft. That sounds like flag football. Well, we line it up in double tight, double wing. We run for about 4,000 yards a year, and we have to be able to stop the best running teams in the state of Illinois.
I mean, that's the thing is you can say that and you can play this however you want, but you still got to stop teams that are playing smash mouth.
100%.
Right? So, yeah.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they can still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website, get started on the journey to a more confident, successful athlete with Mental Mettle Coaching. Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness, using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mental Mettle Coaching.
So I got to ask, Coach, this is the Mental Mettle Podcast. What's the connection between this and your players' mentality and the mental health of your players?
So the biggest thing is when you're grinding kids into the ground, players think that all you care about is essentially the physical aspect of football, right? When you say, hey, guys, we're not taking the field on Monday because we value your recovery. We need a dynamite film game plan session. When we get to the playoffs and we play Friday night and then we don't play till Saturday in football, guess what? We take Saturday off, Sunday. We give them Monday off. Most coaches would double down and practice that extra day.
Oh, yeah.
So we tell our guys, listen, you're going to have, it's over 100 hours from pads to pads. So imagine what that says to a kid, right? When a kid says, man, Coach wants us to have a really good week of practice. He's setting us up. He's and so when we ask them to do hard stuff, they recognize that I said, there's not we may not be the best coaches in the state, but I don't think there's another program in the state that cares more about your well-being, your, how you feel, anything. So we add, and this is something I stole from a coach in Wisconsin. We have what we call 2 Slice Tuesdays. So every Tuesday when our players walk off the practice field, they get 2 slices of pizza. We have members in our community that come out. I set a table up behind practice, and we walk around. It's a great thing. I set a table up, and they ask me, what time should it be there? I say 4:45. Do you care where it comes from? No. They drop it off. They pay for it, and our kids eat pizza. We feed them as much as we can. We have at halftime, we have high sugar snacks. We have snacks on the sideline like gummy worms or gummy bears or nerd clusters or honey stingers, things throughout the game for them to be like, we do everything in our power to get them to understand that their well-being is important to us. And we think of them as people, and we do stuff, off the field. We try to have the best gear. We do everything we can to get them to understand how much we care about them. And so from a mental standpoint, in my opinion, when things get hard, they do what they need to do because they know that the coaching staff loves them and cares about them, and that their players do, that their buddies do. And we were all brought up this way, right? If we do enough hard stuff in practice, but a kid isn't going to put his hand in the dirt and think, man, I remember those 5 gassers we ran at the end of practice yesterday. That's why I'm going to do this. No, they do it because they understand that they don't want to let their coaches down or their teammates because of how much we've all put into this, and the fact that we treat them as human beings and we have a relationship with them. And I coach track and field too for that relationship. We're talking to them throughout the summer. So to answer that question from a mental standpoint, the kids realize now that we care more about them as human beings and their well-being than we do. And we have a saying in our program now that the scoreboard should take care of itself. And if it doesn't, we're okay with that, because we're going to control what we can control. And that's going to be rest, recovery, sleep. We're going to coach you the hardest we can in terms of technique. We're going to try to put you in the best situation we can for you to be successful. That might ask you to move positions, but everything that we're going to ask you to do is to get you on the field and to allow you to perform at your best. And that's how we sell it to our kids.
Love it. Speaks so much to the idea of intentionality and purposefulness, like just doing things on purpose and having a reason for the things that you do. I'm just like you said, I'm all for hard work. I think putting in hard work and putting in effort is how you get better at things. But there's a lot of things, a lot of practices, a lot of situations where you just grind, but you're only grinding for the purpose of grinding.
Correct.
And if you can mix and it's like, hey, we're gonna work and we're gonna grind, but we're gonna do it sporadically, we're gonna do it intentionally, and we're gonna do it with a purpose. I just love that. Well, you can't argue with the success either.
Yeah, and I don't remember where I saw the analogy, but you talk about the word toughness, right? And a lot of times we equate, if you lose, you weren't tough enough. Well, it's like, okay, so on one end, right, we got the Navy SEALs, super tough people, right? I don't think anyone would disagree. And then on the other end, you got someone that might be a tightrope walker, right? If those two people switch roles, is that Navy SEAL tough on the tightrope? And is that person in tights that's on the tightrope going to be tough in a Navy SEAL uniform, And so when we do, and football is the biggest militaristic sport there is, right?
Absolutely.
We try to equate the two together. And there's just this idea that as long as we struggle enough through a bunch of hard things, no matter how random they are, that will allow us to execute, right? Because it's really not toughness coaches are after, it's executing when the game's on the line.
Right.
And so what if in practice we put them in situations where they had to execute? And the other thing that I think we've gotten wrong for so long is football coaches want to repeat it until it's right, which I understand to some levels, especially at the lower level. But I think part of being tough is to understand the finality of something. So if you don't execute, there's not a do-over. So we have periods in practice where, it might be a 2-minute drill and we throw an interception on the first play. The 2-minute drill's over. What do you mean, coach? Can we do that again? No. We lost. If we do this on Thursday, then we lose. Now I understand, right? Young kids and JV, right? There's like a JV game is you lose a JV game, whoop-de-doo, right? We want to teach the technique, we want to keep kids excited, keep them interested. But I don't think football coaches teach the finality of stuff. And in my opinion, the best way to get kids to understand that is to take opportunities away. If you, and I was listening to Bronco Mendenhall yesterday talking about how work will essentially spill into whatever time we give it, right? So if we have a 3-hour practice, we are going to fill the whole thing. Doesn't mean we're going to do it any more effectively. But if we say, we're only going an hour and 45. And so some coaches think that's lazy. In my opinion, a 3-hour practice is lazy because I got so much time to do whatever. But if it's an hour 45, you want to talk about efficiency because we still got to perform, right? So you can do less. A lot of people do less, but can you do less and still be effective? And what we found is the effectiveness of that less can be very high if the kids understand it, right? Because the kids want to perform. I mean, no kid goes out for sport to not perform when it's time to perform. And so that's kind of our selling point. Like, hey, like you said, there may be times where like, guys, this period in practice is going to kind of suck a little bit. Like we're going to work on some of our repeat sprint ability here because it's preseason and we've got to get you ready for game 1. So we're going to do some things where we go super hard for 6 seconds and then we're going to take our 30 seconds. And then we're going to go super hard for 6 and we're going to do some of that stuff early in the season because we've got to get them ready for game 1.
Yeah.
But that's the same work rest ratio that they're going to have in the game. So our doing stuff tough isn't just get on the line and run 110s for 15 seconds, right? I mean, and so
I think that, one of my ideas is the idea. I think that toughness, for some reason, over the years, and what you're talking about, toughness has developed what we used to think the old school was the connotation for toughness was negative, right? It's everything has to be like it's this or else. It's a very negative connotation. You have to be able to take toughness from a positive connotation as well. Like feel good about doing things the right way and improving, and that's toughness as well. And I feel that in everything that you're talking about is like, hey, we're going to do things the right way. Like you say, talking about an hour and 45-minute practice, that takes some mental toughness to make sure you're staying on track and staying focused rather than just, again, more time because we have more time. And
right. Or the coach that says, hey, we'll be done at 5, but actually gets done at 5:30, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've all,
means, I know.
We've all been a part of that.
Yeah, and I think that's well, yeah, and it makes the kids and the parents and the community think that your time is more important than theirs. And that's, that stuff, that matters.
And really, and I did this for a long time, right? Think about how much a kid holds back throughout practice when they think they're going to get destroyed at the end in some aimless conditioning, or they think, well, this thing's going to go 3 hours, right? So I have to, so the way I started kind of talking to coaches about this is let's say on Monday that every kid started the week with 100% of their pie of energy, right? Because energy it's not this unlimited thing. Now, we all know that kids don't go home and just sleep and do what they need to recover. But let's say they started with 100%. Well, a football coach can't control the difficulty of what their school week looks like.
Right.
They can't control their home life. They can't control their work life if they have to work. They can't control, obviously, social media and all that. You can have all the conversations you want, relationship stress. So stress is stress. So let's just say, in all reality, by the time I get that pie, I might have 50% of it left. Now, am I going to destroy it all in practice and hope to see what's left in the game? Or is my practice going to hopefully give them the efficiency, what they need to perform and as much of that energy left, right? So we want our guys sticking around after practice to throw a little bit more because it's like, Coach, I still feel good. Practice over already? Man, that's what I want. And so, I haven't had a football meeting yet. I will let our kids get as far away from football as they can in the off season. And some people are already into their winter workouts, even though they're probably they're illegal, right? But like, so we only use 11 contact days in the summer. We do everything in July. We only go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We do nothing on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because I want my kids, just like when Little League started back in the day, or like I want our kids to like be. Finally everything else is over. It's time for football season. And same thing with Friday night, right? So our nickname's the Panthers. So I kind of, it's like, I want to cage them up a little bit, especially defensively.
Yeah.
I want my number one defense to be like about half mad at me through the week because I don't let them kill our scout team. I want to see what I see. And I've done this so many times. We'll come out and, they'll make a great play on first down and again, we're going against our scout team. But they're flying around, they're excited, and like maybe 4 plays into it, I'm like, number 2's you're in. I'm like, guys, you guys are ready. man, we are ready to play this game. That's all I need to see. And they're like, come on, coach, can we get a couple more? And, you know, how many times in practice, right, does a kid say, coach, can we get a bunch more? No, they're like, coach, is this thing over? We want our guys to want more. And the only way you do that is by taking things away and taking opportunities away. It makes the few opportunities they do get very important.
I love that. And what I love in that you said early on there, you were talking about focusing on the controllables, which is something I preach constantly whenever I do individual coaching with an athlete or a team. It's something that we think we do it, but you really have to notice where your focus is, what you're focusing on. Is it something you can and controlling something that you can't? And a lot of times coaches are really good at saying that to their players, but you said it and talking about what I can. And you did it from a coach perspective, because a lot of times as coaches, we want our players to do one thing, and then we're we don't do it for ourselves. And you have to recognize that there's other things going on in a kid's life that you can't control. So you have to account for those things. And when you have them in practice, control what you can to get what you want. And I think that's, to hear you say that I enjoy hearing that, Coach.
Yeah, and you know, right or wrong, when we know our opponent isn't as good, we're going to do a little more in practice that week. Like if I have a pretty good hunch that we're going to be up 40 at half, which is always our goal, so we can get our guys out and keep them rested, then we have the opportunity to go a little harder in practice. Most people, when they're going to be in a 4-quarter battle, they're going to double down in practice that week. When all you're doing is that pie gets even smaller. Yep. There's already high anxiety. Everyone's already talking about how big the game is. So you already have all that going on. And then if you double down in practice or make it that much more intense, then what do they got left for the game? And you know, it's a counterintuitive thought, but I would rather have our guy, you know, I don't need their best on Tuesday. I need their best on Friday. I need Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday to make Friday as good as we can. And for too long, I wanted to, you know, drain every ounce of energy they had on Tuesday and every ounce on Wednesday. Most every coach backs off on Thursday, and it's like, okay, but the damage is done, right? And we used to condition them, you know, to where guys would throw up on Monday, and it's like, how's that setting up a productive week? You know, it's like, but that everyone did it. And it's like, well, we got to be tough in the fourth quarter. Well, in my opinion, if we can win the first 3 quarters, the fourth quarter isn't going to matter.
You're right. I love it. So there's so much. I'm sure that we could talk longer. We could keep talking on this for a while. I love the talk, and I love your energy with it. But what have we missed? What have I not asked you that I should have, Coach? That's always my final question.
You know, I think the thing that's also missed with this idea is coaches and coaches' families. You know, because we went to this model where we don't demand that our coaches come in at 6 a.m. and have 8-hour meetings on the weekends. And, you know, with all this technology that we use, it's wild to me. I did a study one time on Twitter, and I just asked people to tell me how many hours a day they spend in the football season doing football stuff. And it was 25 to 40 hours on top of their normal week. Mm-hmm. And, you know, talk about coaches burnout and coaches getting divorced and all these different things that happen. I've been able to keep the core of my football staff, unless they've went on to be head coaches, which were a couple of them. You know, my offensive coordinator's been here for the entire time. And so we have 2 guys that have came in and have never left, because for their families, they can be dads on Saturday. They can be dads on Sunday. They still get their work in. Don't get me wrong. They're still prepared. We get everything done. But if I'm a guy that wants to get up and work in the morning, or I know I got church on Sunday, I'm going to get my work done later, or I might do some on Saturday night when the kids go to bed. So we give our coaches that flexibility to get their jobs done, instead of saying, okay, we're going to meet from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Sunday. Well, again, what was Friday night, right? So, you know, we all grew up in this program with no kids to young kids, and now they're anywhere between 2 to 13 or 14. And so, like, we're all still married. It's a lot on the wives. And so I think in terms of saving coaches' careers and coaches' families, this way gives our coaches the most opportunity to be dads. We walk off the practice field at 4:45, and we are able to pick our kids up from daycare or get our kids from school. And it has allowed us to keep a continuity in our staff, which is ultimately why we've been able to be successful. And it allows our coaches to be dads. And I think that's a huge thing that gets lost.
So all you're doing is creating mentally healthy situations for your coaches, mentally healthy situations for your players, physically healthy players, and state championship appearances. That's all you got?
Yeah, I mean, that's our hope. And like I said, this year we ran into a really good Catholic school, Belleville All-Top, and they beat us. And that was life. But we were in a quarterfinals. Talk about adversity. Week 2, we lost on the last play of the game against one of our rival schools that we beat the year before in the playoffs. We got a rematch in the quarterfinals this year, and we beat them 16-7 at their place to go to the semifinals. So we were able to, we didn't come back on Wednesday and say, all right, get on the line. We're going to run for every penalty and every this. And because it's like apples and oranges. I mean, why did we have a penalty? It's probably a lack of fundamentals, probably bad technique, or a lack of focus. So running a bunch of gassers has no connection to that. Now, it might make the coach feel better, right? He thinks he's going to feel better by making the kids struggle, but the connection's not there. So why don't we get better at the thing? If we have 3 turnovers, it's not because we didn't run enough. There's an execution error there, or there needs to be a substitution, or whatever the scenario is. And I think, again, that's the biggest thing that we focus on. Because anybody in the crowd can say they don't work hard enough, they're not physical enough, they're not tough enough. I mean, that's what people say in the crowd.
Sure.
Coaches shouldn't say that. Those are ambiguous terms that aren't the reason you're losing. You're losing because your players don't know where to go. They don't know how to use the technique. Maybe they haven't physically been trained, or they can't do it. You're asking a 200-pound guy to one-on-one block a guy that's 275. There's legit reasons why you're not winning games. And that's the focus of our program is how do we take every kid and give them an opportunity to be successful? And we always tell the kids on day 1 when the first group of 11 hops out there, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop. I don't know anything. But what I do know is U11 will not be who starts in those positions at the end of the year. I said, even the depth chart I have isn't right because some kid's going to overperform, some kid's going to underperform. An injury is going to happen. Something's going to shake out. We're going to move this guy to here and this guy to here. And we're going to figure the pieces of the puzzle out as we go. And we're okay with that because we want to be at our best at the end of the season when it's time. And so that we focus on trying to give those kids the best opportunity.
I love it. I love all the things you're saying, Coach. It's good. It's doing things intentional, purposeful, and not, again, as I started this interview, not just because it's the way we always did it. And I think and I think you're going to do some things wrong in that pursuit.
100%.
But if long as you have the idea that I'm going to continue to get better and I'm going to continue to tweak stuff, which it sounds like you're doing, you're going to start moving towards your goal. And that's not always winning football games, but a lot of times it is.
We're willing to live with the results. We don't necessarily have goals. This is our mission. This is what we want. And we're going to live with the results and that's okay.
Yeah. Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a great interview. It's going to be a great episode. And I sure I will keep in touch and I may come back and pick your brain some more later.
All right. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
What could you achieve if you had unshakable confidence? At Mental Mettle Coaching, I work with athletes, coaches, and professionals who are up for a challenge and ready to unlock their full potential. We offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, inspire your team, or thrive in your career, we'll give you the tools to face adversity head on and grow through every challenge. Don't wait to start living your life with confidence. Check the show notes for my contact information, and let's forge your mettle together. I listened to that interview back a couple times and just picking up what I wanted to hear. And I started applying it to my own life and how I used to do things, how I do things now, and just where it fits, where it doesn't. And, I consider myself to be somewhat of a tough guy. I'm not making this all about me or not being arrogant, but I've done some difficult things. So I've climbed a buddy and I once, I've climbed a 14er out in Colorado. I've run a couple marathons. I practice and I'm a blue belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. These aren't things that everybody does. And these are, what things that people would either call tough or call crazy. But the fact is, I know how to grind. I know how to train tough. I know how to lift hard. I know how to run hard. I know how to train hard. I know how to roll hard. I know how to do these things. And after I've done some of these big things like train or, getting run a marathon or competed in a jiu-jitsu tournament, it feels tough until you see me the next day or for a week after. You know how tough I look getting out of bed? Ask my wife. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. It's not tired. It's not pretty. I'm tired. I'm sore. And usually after I do something like that, I'm contemplating never, ever doing it again. I'm especially not considering doing it again next week. And do you know what I did before each marathon and before each tournament? I taper down. I calm down on the training. I slow the physical training and I kind of start to focus on the mental training. Even my instructors at jiu-jitsu, when they know you have a tournament coming up that whole week, they won't let you live roll. They're like, hey, go easy. And we would still work on some technique and focus on things that we wanted to do well in the tournament, but we skipped the hard rolls. And the same way, a week or more, a couple weeks, usually it starts for a couple weeks before a marathon, you start to taper and your long 15, 20 miles runs turn into 5 and 2 mile runs, and you focus on your form and your breathing. And why do I do that? Because I want to do best in my performance. And it struck me that when I was coaching, I don't know that I adhered to this as much as I should have. Sure, we would, like, before a big game, before a big basketball game, the day before practice, we might go light. But, for the most part, most practices, we would grind. We'd work really long practices. And if we weren't getting something right, well, practice is supposed to be at 5, end at 5, but we'll get done when you get done, when we get it right. And then, by January, coaches, we'd get into a little bit of a lull there, and we'd feel like our athletes were dead. They'd be injured, hurting, dragging. And this would usually be right in time for tournament time. And, and here our athletes are mentally and physically kind of dead. And even for a young athlete, we can look at a high school kid or college kid and say, well, yeah, they're prime of their life. They'll bounce back. Well, but that physical exhaustion is real, and they may not have the mental fortitude that we develop as we get older. So that sometimes that little bit of physical exhaustion or physical pain or aches and bruises and stuff like that, it can set them off mentally more than it would an adult. And they may not, if they don't feel their best physically, they may not be thinking and acting and playing their best mentally. And that's something that I probably didn't pay attention to like I should have. And I know, I am all for the grind. I am all for getting after it. I'm all for embracing the suck, as they say. It's a great mindset, and I adhere to that. And I believe in the power of doing things really hard. But there has to be an ample opportunity for the body and the mind to recover if we want it all to come and show up in the performance. After a jiu-jitsu tournament, I may not feel like doing one immediately, and I'm going to take it easy on the mats for a week, and eventually I'll be able to look back at it and say, I'm glad I did that, and I feel a little bit more confident and a little bit tougher for having done that. But it's not going to be immediate, right? So it takes a little bit of time for that grind to play out and help us if we're trying to get the most out of our performance. And doing well in our performance when the lights are on, when everybody's paying attention, that's huge for our mental health and our confidence and moving forward. So we want to cater to that a little bit. And so far I'm only talking about the rest and recovery part of that interview, but Brad talked about it in so many things and the way he's doing things at Camp Point Central. And he's just revamped his program, and he does things different. There's less physical breakdown. They're not breaking the kids down as much. The practices are shorter, but they're also more focused practices, and there's higher standards for the techniques and why we do what we do, and a better understanding of that. And he's even down to talking about more time off for coaches, which means they're not burnt out as much and they're enjoying practices more. And it seemed to me that they figured out what needed cut out and what needed strengthened, and very efficient about what they do and how they do things. And as a result, he's got these mentally and physically healthy athletes. He doesn't get many injuries. His coaches stick around. They like doing it. They enjoy it. Everybody likes being around. They're not beating the kids down, doing all these things, and they're winning state championships. And it's one of the most successful programs in the state of Illinois. So there's a lot to be said for that. And, so how do you want to apply that to your life as you're a coach or just a parent or as a person? You're just listening to this. Well, I think you need to look at what your performances are, what your practices are, what you need to excel at. How are you doing things to help you figure out how to excel? And really looking at things the way you've done them and asking tough questions. Is that really the best way for me? Is that the best thing I should do? Or is there a better way? Look at the result I want. Look at the performance I want. What's the best way to help me get there? And it's just a great question. It's a pretty deep question. It's one that if I was coaching you, if I was in working with you or your team or just a group coaching session, that's a deep question that we would have to really analyze a little bit and get into. But it's a great question you can ask yourself. You can do some writing, say, what's my performance? What's the result I want? And are my actions getting there? The things that I'm practicing, are they really getting there? And it's a great, I just think it's a great way to look at your life and your practices and your business and your relationship, and just say, am I, the way I'm doing things, is that the right way or is that the old way? And then the old way might be the right way, but it might not. So it's a great question. It's why I am constantly listening to podcasts, reading books, and talking to successful people, because I want to get other ideas on the best way to do things. And I just find I'm always looking for the best way to do things and the more mentally healthy way to do things. And they're out there, but if you're not looking for them and you're not trying, you're not going to find them. So just a great episode. I really enjoy it. I can't thank you enough. Viewership's coming up, more people listening, more people sharing, and I love it. I love it when people reach out, comment these things. I can't thank you enough. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all those things. And I can't have a podcast without listeners, so I really appreciate it. So that's the end of this podcast. This has been your host, Coach Matt Thomann. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast, and always remember to forge your metal.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your metal.